I never thought my life would turn into a chaotic whirlwind of betrayal, heartbreak, and danger. From catching my wife cheating to narrowly escaping her chilling attempts to destroy my new life, this story is unlike anything you've heard before. Let me take you through the most unforgettable chapter of my life, a story of love, betrayal, and finding hope in the darkest moments. I never thought my life would turn out this way. At 34, I found myself in a situation that seemed like it was straight out of a movie. But let me start from the beginning because that's the only way. This story makes any sense. He met my wife 7 years ago. Through Instagram, we connected over shared music interests. And soon we were talking every day. The early days were great. We'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing. I was careful about getting into a relationship because I'd seen my dad go through a terrible marriage, but she seemed a different kind of understanding. After dating for a year, we got married. The first few years were good, though not perfect. We had our share of good moments, movie nights, weekend trips, and all those small things that make a marriage work. But around the third year, things started changing. The arguments began, small disagreements about household chores or what to watch on TV. But they grew bigger and more frequent. Every month we'd have at least one major fight that would leave us both frustrated. I suggested marriage counseling, thinking we could work through whatever was causing these issues. We went to one session. The counselor tried to help us understand each other's perspectives, but my wife didn't like it. She refused to go back, saying the counselor was biased against her. I think she just didn't want to hear that. She might need to work on herself too. Her temper got worse after that. She never broke things or hit anyone, but the yelling became more frequent. I thought it might have something to do with losing her mom recently, but whenever I tried to talk about it, she'd shut down completely. We fell into a routine of just existing. Together, the spark was gone, but I still loved her. I believed marriages need work, and I wasn't ready to give up unless something major happened. I grew up believing that marriage isn't something you walk away from without trying everything possible to save it. Then came the business trip that changed everything I work in. Sales, nothing fancy, just a regular job that sometimes requires me to travel to different cities. This particular trip was supposed to last 4 days, but on the third day we got called back because of an emergency at the office. I decided to surprise my wife. Looking back, maybe I was trying too hard to bring back the excitement in our marriage. I bought her favorite flowers, yellow tulips, and headed home early. I had my key, so I let myself in quietly, thinking I'd surprise her. The house was quiet when I walked in. No TV sounds, no music playing. I checked the living room first, then the kitchen empty. When I reached our bedroom door, I heard sounds that made my stomach turn. I opened the door, and there they were, my wife with another. Man, that image is burned into my brain forever. The shock on their faces, when they saw me standing there with flowers in my hand, it was like time stopped. For a moment, the guy grabbed his clothes and tried to push past me. I caught him by his throat and slapped him twice. I'm not proud of getting physical, but in that moment I wasn't thinking straight. After he left, my wife just stood there fixing her clothes and hair like it was any normal day, but what she said next made my blood boil. "Why are you even back?" Those words hit harder than finding her with someone else she wasn't. Sorry. She was angry that I caught her. She started ranting about how I wasn't supposed to be back, how this was somehow my fault for not telling her I was coming home early then. She brought up how she had asked for an open relationship before and how she had needs. I grabbed her shirt and raised my fist. I'm not proud of that moment. I've never hit a woman and never will. But I came close that day. The fear in her eyes snapped me back to reality, and I let go. As I walked out, she started screaming about how I was going to hit her, how I wasn't a real man, and other things I don't even want to repeat. Later, my friend Tom told me she probably wanted me to hit her so she could use it against me in court. I crashed at Tom's place that night. He made me drink after drink while I told him everything, and he kept saying I needed to divorce her right away. I was worried about the costs. I made more money than her, and I didn't want to pay alimony. But Tom convinced me that having proof of her cheating might help with that. What happened next showed me a side of my wife I never knew existed. She started sending me horrible text messages comparing me to the other guy, trying to hurt me in every way possible. Tom was smart enough to tell me To screenshot everything, sure enough. Few minutes later, she unsent all those messages and replaced them with regular insults that had nothing to do with her cheating. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to figure out what to do. Next, little did I know this was just the beginning of a story that would get much crazier than I could have ever imagined. After a month of searching, I found a divorce lawyer I could afford. He seemed confident about handling my case, especially with the screenshots I had saved. He told me we might not eliminate completely, but he'd do his best to minimize it. My wife took her sweet time, responding to the divorce papers a whole month. I think she did it just to annoy him when the proceedings finally started. She made everything difficult. She'd argue about every little thing from wound what to when we could schedule meetings. It was clear she was just trying to make my life harder. During this time I tried to move on. I had some one night stands, but they just made me feel worse. That's why I never wanted an open marriage. I'm just not built for casual relationships. I needed something real, something meaningful to help me heal. That's when I decided to get back into reading. I used to love books before life got too busy one day. I went to a local bookstore looking for something to take my mind off everything. I was standing in the science fiction section, completely lost because I hadn't read anything new. In years, there was this woman looking at books in the same section. I asked her for recommendations, and we ended up talking for almost an hour about our favorite books and authors. There was something special about how easy it was to talk to her. Before I left, I got her number and bought the book she recommended. I was honest with her from the start about my ongoing divorce. She appreciated my honesty and said it didn't bother her. We started dating, and for the first time in months, I felt happy again. She wasn't a distraction for my problems. She was someone who came into my life naturally and made it better. But my wife wasn't done making my life difficult. The divorce was dragging on, and I'd been dating this new woman, let's call her Sarah, for about 5 months. What happened next still gives me nightmares. Sarah and I were walking to her car after spending the afternoon shopping. We were laughing about something when I heard a Karen Jean rev up. Everything happened so fast after that. I saw a car coming straight at us, more specifically at Sarah. I pulled her arm to get her out of the way, but the car still hit her leg. I heard her scream as she fell, and I saw her leg was broken. The car hit another vehicle and then started backing up. I had to drag Sarah between some parked cars to keep her safe because the driver was trying to hit us again. By this time, people were running towards us to help. That's when the driver got out, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was my wife. She looked completely insane, trying to come at us again. But some people held her back. I was in shock. How could someone be so full of hate that they try to kill another person? The police and ambulance arrived quickly as the police were putting her in handcuffs. She started screaming about how I had moved on too quickly, like somehow I was the one who had done something wrong. Sarah was rushed to the hospital. I was terrified that this would be the end of our relationship. Who would want to stay with someone whose crazy ex-wife just tried to kill them? But Sarah surprised me. She said as long as my wife was in prison, there was nothing to worry about. The case against my wife was solid. The parking lot cameras had recorded everything. They showed her driving past us once, probably spotting us, then coming back to try to run Sarah over. The prosecutors had an easy time proving it was a planned attack and not just some accident. The whole court process was exhausting. I had to miss your work for hearings, give statements, and deal with all the stress of seeing my wife in court. But the evidence was overwhelming. Eyewitnesses, security footage, and both Sarah's and my testimony. There was no way my wife could talk her way out of this one. The trial lasted longer than anyone expected. But in the end, she was found guilty of attempted murder and several other charges. She got 12 years in prison. Some people thought it wasn't enough, but the judge considered that she had no criminal record and claimed to be sorry for what she did. I didn't buy her apology, but at least she was going away. For a long time, the best part came when we went back to finish the divorce proceedings. She had to attend through video calls from prison, and sometimes just her lawyer would show up after what she did to Sarah. The judge wasn't interested in being lenient with her. She didn't get anything in the divorce, no alimony. Nothing extra, just what she owned before we got married. When the judge made that decision, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Everything had finally worked out, even though the path to get there had been absolutely crazy. But there was still more to come in this wild journey of mine after the divorce was finally needed a fresh start. I couldn't stay in the same apartment where I had caught my wife cheating. Every room held bad memories. Sarah and I found a new place together, and moving in with her felt like the beginning of something real and good. Sarah recovered completely from her injuries. Sometimes she even jokes about it, saying she took one for the team to get my wife out of our lives. I don't find it funny, but I understand that humor is her way of dealing with what happened. She's incredibly strong. Most people would have run away after something like that, but she stayed. Tom visits us often. He likes to remind me that I owe him for telling me to screenshot those text messages. He's right, those screenshots helped a lot during the divorce. He's also proud that he was the one who pushed me to get a divorce right away instead of trying to work things out. Some things can't be fixed, he always says, and he was right about that too. The whole experience changed how I see relationships. I used to think that if you tried hard enough, you could make any marriage work. Now I know that's not true. Sometimes people change, and not for the better. My wife wasn't the same person I married. The woman who tried to kill Sarah wasn't the same person who used to spend Sunday mornings making pancakes with me. I still think about how things might have been different. Maybe I should have left when the argument started getting bad. Maybe I should have pushed harder for us to continue counseling, but thinking about what ifs doesn't help anyone. What happened happened. Sarah and I have been together for 2 years now. We're talking about getting married, but we're not in a rush. She understands why I want to take things slow this time. She says she'd rather have a long, happy relationship than a quick marriage that might fall apart. The apartment we share is filled with books. We turned one of the spare rooms into a library with shelves from floor to ceiling. It's funny how something as simple as asking for a book recommendation changed my life sometimes. The best things happen when you're not looking for them. My wife will be in prison for at least 8 more years, maybe less, with good behavior. I try not to think about when she'll get out. Sarah says we can deal with that when the time comes. She's right. There's no point worrying about something that's years away. Work is going well. I got promoted last year partly because I never let all the drama affect my job performance. It wasn't easy attending court dates and dealing with lawyers while maintaining my sales numbers, but I managed. My boss said he was impressed by my professionalism during that time. Tom keeps telling me I should write a book about what happened. He says people would want to read it. Maybe he's right, but I'm not ready to relive everything in that much detail for now. I'm happy just sharing my story here, hoping it might help someone else who's going through something similar. Looking back, I realized that catching my wife cheating was actually a good thing. If I hadn't come home early that day, I might still be stuck in that unhappy marriage, a third at the time. But it led me to where I am now, in a healthy relationship with someone who actually cares about me. The hardest lesson I learned is that sometimes the person you trust the most can hurt you the worst. But I also learned that there are good people out there. People who will stand by you even when things get crazy. Sarah proved that to me. I still have the book Sarah recommended. The day we met, it sits on her bedside table. Even though I finished reading it long ago, it reminds me that good things can come from bad situations, and that sometimes the worst moments in your life can lead you to the best ones. Life isn't perfect now, but it's good, really good. Sarah and I have our routines, weekend brunches, movie nights, long talks about books. It's the kind of simple happiness I always wanted but never had in my marriage. I don't take it for granted anymore. If there's one thing I want people to take from my story, it's this: don't stay in a bad situation just because you're afraid of change. Change can be good. Sometimes it's exactly what you need, even if you don't know it at the time. And if someone shows you who they really are, believe them. The first time the future looks bright. Now Sarah and I are planning to buy a house next year. We want a bigger library and maybe a garden. Simple dreams, but they're ours. That's all that matters. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot, and if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story. Thank you for sticking with me through this roller coaster of a story. If you took away anything from my experience, I hope it's this: never settle for less than you deserve, and sometimes Even the worst moments can lead you to the best outcomes. Don't forget to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Got your own story or thoughts? Drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and remember, life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it.